So this deck's commander is Kami of the Crescent Moon. Comes out pretty quickly and usually stays around for a bit because everybody wants the extra card draw. Now, this deck is pretty light on lands. In fact, a majority of the lands are just simply basic islands and little utility lands to make sure that I have no maximum hand size, in case I need to cycle for an extra bit of draw, and just a couple of lands that do little things like gain 1 life for each colorless creature I control, destroy lands, and get me a couple more basic lands. Really quick and simple: Mana Acceleration, Mana Rock, Sky Diamond, Eye of Ramos, Gilded Lotus. That's just for the colored mana. And then colorless mana. 5 Mana Rocks there. This one can be a pain in the butt if you get it at the beginning because it stays tapped for a while. A little bit of an extra life boost. It's very small, but it's 1 life per turn or per untapping cycle. That'll make sense later. Alright, and we have our drawing package here. This one, I say it's a drawing package, but it's predominantly for recursion, trying to bring stuff back in the deck, but it does let me draw a card as well. Consecrated Sphinx, everybody knows this one, everybody hates it / loves it. And Kozilek the Great Distortion. It gives me a little bit of card draw one time, but also helps me out with a little bit of countering. It's pretty much the only counter in this whole deck. There's only a couple other pieces that are counter-worthy. It's mostly for slowing down, but stuff like this, draw a card for each wizard I control. The deck only has 14 things that can be wizards, but it has a lot of draw and doubling the draw and stuff like that. Oh yeah, also gives me no hand size, and it also helps mill, which is a side function of this deck. I haven't actually come up with the name of this deck. If you have any ideas, please let me know. Yeah, well of ideas. That was perfectly timed. And, Primal Tide. That's a good one. It's a big creature, no maximum hand size. Every non-creature spell my opponent's played gives me a card. And it has pseudo-evasion, or at least evasion from destruction. Font of Mythos, another card that people will let stay around for a while because they want the extra card draw. And Windfall. I know it affects everybody, but I need the card draw. At the same time, it kind of ties in with the milling aspect of this deck. Because of all the drawing this deck does, every card I draw also mills my opponents. And Psychosis Crawler, you know how it works. It helps whittle down their life pretty quickly. Assuming I can get it to stay on the field for a turn or two. Alright, this also gives me pseudo-milling and gives me recursion back into the deck. Force Fruition, it's one of those cards that everybody thinks it's great until they realize after 2 spells they've taken out about a fifth of their deck. And now their hand's full and they're going to have to discard. Archive Trap, 13 cards milled and can cost 0, especially with all those fetch lands people use. And even one of my lands forces them to search for a land, so it's kind of a... How shall I put it? It's a trap. A trap for the trap. Supreme Inquisitor. Like I said, 14 cards that can be wizards. Tap 5 of them. And not only do I get to see their deck, I can get rid of some combo pieces for some of those infinite combo players. And thin out the deck. Then Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. It removes the top 20 cards of their deck every time it attacks. And just casting it, exile 2 permanents. At the right time, this one can mill off a third to half of any opponent's deck. At the right time, anyways. And, this auto lets me tap it so that I can put the top card of their library. So for those people who do a search and put it on the top of the library with like Vampiric Tutor or something, it helps get it off. And then I have 8 copies of Persistent Petitioners, set of 4 advisors allows me to discard 12 off the top. Got a couple other cards in the deck that can be considered advisors, so I have a decent chance of getting a set of 4, but even if not, it still has its own activated ability that costs 1 for 1. It's not a big deal, but it adds up when all of it's together. Plus, with all the card draw, it helps thin out everybody's deck. Now, this is so that everything goes back to people's hands. Crystal Shard, it's mostly to rescue my creatures, but at the right time I can return a creature to their hand, when they're tapped out, whatnot. And this one, whenever it gets tapped, so if I use that other merfolk to tap it to discard a card, I can also pay 2 and return a permanent to its hand, including lands. That can be helpful sometimes. If they want to go Alpha Strike on me, all of it get returned to their hands. And this one, because of the recursion, I can see it multiple times throughout the game. Just return a creature and get a bunch of 1/1 flying creature tokens. Sometimes it can be used to be a little aggressive, but mostly it's used as defense against flyers. 6 permanents for 5, not a bad deal. Everybody knows Cyclonic Rift. And Baral's Expertise. 3 things back and something with 4 mana cost for free from my hand. There's a decent number of things that cost 4 or less that can be in my hand. And then over here, it's my token package. Clone Legion. Every creature a particular player has, I can make a copy of it. So if I have the best creatures, I can just double them. And then Rite of Replication, you know how it works, especially for some of those cards that slow people down. I can get 5 copies of it, either theirs or mine. And seeing how many instants and sorceries this deck is having, you can imagine how much of a legion of zombies I can get from this. Now, this is a side package. All 3 of them together make something really great, but each work by themselves as well. Unwinding Clock, it can help me out untapping my mana rocks so I can use them every single turn, and helps untap things like this. That's good by itself, but if I need to search for a card that I might not get for a while or need instantly, I get to search my library and put it directly into play. And then this takes care of some protection from certain colors here or there, and also helps out with the fact that it turns all my stuff into artifacts, so even my lands get untapped. So that makes this Unwinding Clock a Seedborn Muse, minus the creature type. Plus, colorless creatures. Remember that one land that gives me life? All my creatures suddenly are points of life for me to gain. Now, before I continue, I should mention that I'm really well aware that last package could be better with Darksteel Forge, making everything I own indestructible. I just didn't want to go that far. There's plenty of stuff in this deck that can actually be much improved upon, but I'm trying not to be that much of a jerk. Okay, so now this package is to help slow down my opponent. Tap and untap Cephalid. I have a couple of creatures in there that are shapeshifters, so it's not that much. But, tapping down a key piece or tapping down all tapping all non-flying creatures can help out if I'm playing a bunch of green decks or just non-flying decks. Platinum Angel, they're forced to deal with it before they can actually really take me out, and also gives me time in case I would die to launch a comeback. Gets rid of all the abilities that my opponents have that might be giving me a hard time, slows down their casting of spells. They have to really pay attention to their converted mana costs. Basically, I have a 50% chance that each spell they want to play can't be played, and they can't block with creatures that have even converted mana costs. This one, flyers, pseudo evasion, and can help me destroy some very key pieces that might be hindering me or might be excelling my opponent. And then Fate Spinner. It does slow them down because they have to choose a draw step, main phase, or combat phase, and they have to skip it. And they have to choose this every one of their upkeeps. This last package is pretty miscellaneous. These bottom three, these by themselves can turn or be used with a couple of those lords, wizards, cephalids, etc. And plus, if I need it, this can turn any one of these guys into a copy of another creature. Sometimes static abilities are helpful, or if I need it to be a copy of a creature that's about to die that I needed for that turn, it's useful. And this one has a secondary ability that I really like. I pay 4, 2 blue, 2 generic, and I choose a creature type, and each creature I control becomes that type until end of turn. All those merfolks, all those advisors, all those wizards, whatever I need. Then a piece of recursion, and because of those instants and sorcery spells, a little bit of damage here or there. Creature or player, unfortunately it doesn't do anything to planeswalkers. Just something to have another wizard and another source of no maximum hand size. Considering all the draw that I'll have, I really need to make sure I have no maximum hand size. Don't know if you paid attention before or if I mentioned it, but there was a creature that says whenever one of my creatures deals damage, I could draw a card, and since everything's blue, it becomes a non-bow if I have Mycosynth Lattice, or Lattice, I like to say it all fancy. But when that's not on the field, this makes virtually everything I have unstoppable. Okay, that's the video for this deck. I didn't actually have a name when I started, but as I went through this, I think I came up with a name. This is my heavy-handed deck. Yeah, that's a bad name. Got any other opinions? Alright, catch you next time.